It's BBC Radio Sheffield, Ellie and the team at breakfast. Now, for victims of domestic abuse, being able to talk about your experiences with a professional can be a huge help. But a women's charity in Sheffield called Vida say they're at risk of closing because of costs. They've now put out an urgent appeal to raise £54,000 by the end of January to save the charity. Their CEO, Karen Haig, is here with me in the studio now, along with Becky Bailey, who used the service. We'll get to Bex in just a moment. Karen, first of all, for anybody who hasn't come across the work that you have done before, just tell us a bit about what you do.
Yes, Vida Sheffield has a 30-year history of supporting women and girls with domestic abuse. And sorry, just by the way, thank you for having us here so we can deal with this and talk about our charity. In the early days, it was the Domestic Abuse Forum, the only service available. Over the years, we've seen so many develop, and Vida Sheffield have concentrated over the last 7 years in providing therapy services for those recovering from abuse. So these are trauma-informed therapy services, and they're specifically for women.
Obviously, you've put out that you need some quite substantial financial help. So, you know, what's happened? How have we got to this point? And it's not an embarrassing question, by the way. It's just, you know, why do you need the money?
I suppose it's a sign of the landscape that charities have to function in nowadays. It's highly competitive trying to get funding through the ordinary grant funding approach. We have done that. We've put together quite significant bids and failed at the last hurdle. Some of those can take 6 months to go through. We do have an outstanding bid with the Department of Health and Social Care. They've delayed their decision, so that's meant that we've had to take a formal approach. Our board have had to react and let our service users know and our staff know that we're at risk. And in any case, trying to survive hand in mouth year on year in this way is not ideal. There is funding within government organisations. Our Home Office have had bits out in the past, and we now have the Disability Act 2021 that enshrines certain responsibilities for local authorities to ensure domestic abuse services are available. But sadly, the long-term mental health recovery is not part of that. So if we do go to commissioners, they say they've got a big black hole at the moment and there's very little they can do to support an organisation like ours, because many, quite rightly, is focused on the front line, crisis management, refuges, support with individual domestic abuse advisors, etc. So we're at the bottom of the pile when funding's handed out.
And at £54,000 in around 8 weeks, it's a big amount in a quick time frame. I suppose both sides of this, you know, what will that money do for you? How would it help? What difference would it make? And if you don't get that money, what happens?
Yeah, well, we know what happens if we don't get the money. We've had to put everyone on notice that we'll wind up at the end of January. We're very proud of our therapy service. We've only just received accreditations through the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapists, so that puts us on a par with other specialist mental health services within the NHS. So our concern is that when we wind up, if we wind up, sorry, I'm going to be positive. If we wind up, it will put added pressure on the NHS services. We know that we're saving £50,000 a month in terms of comparing value for money. We are amazing value for money. We have about 250 women we support every year, and we can see the impact of what we do. Most of them tell us that they feel suicidal, and by the end of their sessions with us, 78% are saying they're no longer having suicidal thoughts and are less depressed and anxious.
I want to mention as well, for anybody listening right now, obviously we are touching on upsetting topics. Yes. So if anybody does need support, as always, you can go to bbc.co.uk/action line for that. I'm just going to bring in Bex in as well, because Bex, you have used this service. You don't have to go into your story. It's personal to you, my friend, but just tell us, you know, what difference using this service did make to you.
Oh, it absolutely turned my life around. It got me from a place where I was experiencing my PTSD symptoms daily, and it was affecting every single aspect of my life. And I wasn't sort of happy at all. I was just kind of surviving and blundering through. And after the therapy I had, which the one-to-one sessions, I only had 6 with a psychotherapist, but afterwards it like I said, completely changed my life. My PTSD symptoms were something that was maybe monthly, if that. I could sort of go out and socialise without being absolutely terrified. You know, if anyone knocked on my door, it wasn't an instant fear and like panic response. And I wasn't constantly in that fight and flight mode anymore, which is an unbelievably exhausting way to be living. Yeah, so it's definitely put me where I am now, because I don't think I could sort of do the job I'm in now, where I'm working for an amazing charity called Chili Pep, who support children and young people. Also, I'm a mum now. I've got a little 1-year-old, and I wouldn't have been able to do this if I was still experiencing those symptoms every day.
And I suppose if Vida wasn't around to help, what situation do you think that you'd be in now?
I don't think I'd be here, because the sort of way my PTSD was manifesting, I was sort of putting myself in really unsafe situations, and I was feeling really depressed, and it wasn't like a way that I could sort of carry on maintaining, and I was constantly asking for support from different mental health services, but I was either too complex or not high risk enough to access any NHS services. It was only Vida who would take me. So yeah, I absolutely owe them everything for sort of where I am now.
Well, I'm so glad you are here. I obviously speak for Karen as well and everybody listening, I imagine. So thank you for sharing that with us, because I know it's not easy. Karen, just lastly to you, what else do you want to tell people about this service? Why does it need to be saved?
Yeah, good point. Within the National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines, health professionals are required to signpost individuals that declare they have some experience of domestic abuse. They're supposed to signpost them to specialist services within their NHS service or within the volunteering community sector. Within Sheffield and this region, there are no other services that focus on long-term mental health recovery for those domestic abuse victims. We are the only service, and so I would say, please, commissioners, the public of Sheffield, please help us keep this service going, because without it, we know it's a lifeline to those women that have accessed our service over 30 odd years. Without it, we really just, it's unthinkable, you know. I have sleepless nights worrying about what will happen to those women that attend, and it's hard to live with, really, if you think of the worst situations and the worst scenarios that might arise. So really appreciate any help out there that can be given.
Thank you so much to both of you for coming in today. Really appreciate that. And hopefully we can give a positive update on Vida next year. Thank you.